Hi guys, Darren Mitchell here, and in today's video I want to explore this concept of servant leadership. Now the best way to illustrate this is through a story, and it goes back many years, and I use two fictitious names, Tom and Harry. Both Tom and Harry were very successful individual contributors in their sales team, and because of their achievement over a number of years, their management team thought, you know what, Tom and Harry would be great as leaders, so they promoted them as part of the company's succession plan. Now this is where things get interesting, because Tom took all of the habits he developed as an individual contributor, and when he became a sales leader, he continued to demonstrate those behaviours. For example, when he was out with account managers in front of his customers, he would take control or ownership of the sales strategy, and in the process started to deposition his sales team and condition the customers to only come to him when it came to a decision that needed to be made. As a result, in a very short period of time, he'd lost his trust, the trust of his sales team, and within 12 months had gone back to an individual contributor role. Now, by contrast, Harry did something completely different. He recognised that there are certain things that he needed to do in order to earn the trust of his team and to create an environment whereby his team could be successful with or without him. But here's 7 attributes of servant leadership that Harry implemented successfully, which ended up creating an environment where he was not only successful, but his team was sustainably successful as well. So let's have a look at these really quickly. Number 1, Harry recognised that it was all about others. It wasn't about him. Where Tom went into situations and wanted to big note himself, quote unquote, run the sales strategy, Harry on the other hand knew that it was all about his team. So he focused on, what can I do to help my team, to drive my team to be more independent in terms of their thinking, so that they could actually learn the way to not only make decisions from a selling or sales strategy perspective, but also teach customers that they were the key person of influence that they needed to build a relationship with, and it wasn't necessarily the sales leader in terms of Harry. So that's the first thing he did. He made it all about others. Second thing he did, he's focused on the possibilities. Tom, on the other hand, created an environment where it was all controlling, to the point where all of his team had to come to him to ask for permission to do certain things. Harry, on the other hand, said, you know what, we're going to focus on the possibilities. What is possible to achieve? I don't care if we make mistakes, as long as we don't repeat those mistakes. So in the process, what he did is created an environment whereby his team started to think more independently, knew that it was okay to quote unquote fail, but if they failed and fell, then they would be failing forward, which meant they'd be learning something and actually progressing. So it was more focused on growth rather than getting things right. The third thing, he understood that, as John Maxwell says, everything rises and falls on leadership. And from a leadership perspective, leadership is influence and influence is leadership. So through the environment that Harry created, he knew that not only through the language that he used within the environment, and certainly when he was speaking to his team either collectively or individually, but through the example that he demonstrated. When he was being seen and observed by his team, he was influencing and therefore persuading his team to act in a certain way. And it was all based around this attitude and environment of empowerment and encouragement. So number 4, he wasn't position focused. Where Tom was always focused on, I'm now the sales leader, therefore I am the boss, Harry on the other hand said, we don't worry about the hierarchy. In fact, he said many times, in fact from day one, he said, I'm here to serve you guys. I work for you. You don't work for me. So he threw the hierarchy out. What this meant was that when Harry's team were successful, he was the one sitting behind and allowing the team to take the accolades, where Tom would sit in the front and get all the glory. So he was not position focused. He made it all about his team, and therefore that came through in everything that he did. He also was very humble. He left his ego at the door. Again, it wasn't about him getting the accolades, it was about what environment he was creating for his team so it would enable them to be successful. So if they made a mistake, he was the first person to step in and take responsibility for that. But if they actually did something well, he was also the first person to encourage them and give them a good pat on the back. So being humble was an incredibly important thing that Harry found towards his servant leadership. Number 6, Harry became a fantastic listener. Now there's a massive difference between hearing something and listening. Active listening is where you actually get into the essence and you're fully present with that particular person, and he did this really, really well, to the point where he realised and found out that many people were going to be sharing things and did share things that were of quite a personal nature but did have an impact on their ability to be effective at work. And through that process where he wasn't judging them, he was seeking how to serve them, and in many cases didn't give them the answers but helped guide them through the answers for themselves. He actually built a huge level of trust. And the last one there, he actually did one thing that many leaders don't do. And certainly Tom didn't do this, he focused on developing other leaders. Key thing around leadership, in fact I use this a lot in workshops, and I ask this question of sales leaders in particular. What is your only purpose for being a leader? And many people will come up with many different answers, but really when it's all said and done, the purpose of being a great leader is to first of all identify other leaders and then develop those leaders to the point where they become even better than you. And to the point where you potentially then become redundant, but not redundant from your role. You now have opportunities elsewhere within the organisation or elsewhere in the marketplace where your skills, your capabilities are needed. So they're the 7 things that Harry did exceptionally well. What that led to was that Harry became a very successful sales leader over many, many years. And his team went on to be really, really successful as well in their own right, of which about 50% of them went on to become sales leaders in their own right as well. So here's the question I've got for you. From a servant leadership perspective, if you're running a sales team or have an anticipation of running a sales team into the future, what do you consider to be really important elements of servant leadership? I'd love to hear your comments, and as always, if you've got any questions, please post them below. And until next time, have a fantastic selling week. All the best.